Addio, mia bella Napoli, addio, addio, la tua soave immagine, chi mai scordar potrà.
Ciao ragazzi and benvenuti to the 45th episode of In the Shadow of Vesuvio. My name is Henry Bell and I'm recording this on the south side of Glasgow. I'm at home, I'm reclining on a sofa, exactly the sort of sofa that if you listen to last week's episode, Michele Borelli wants to see in every cafe in Naples. Michele, how the hell are you? How are you in Naples in the shadow of Vesuvio?
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm fine. They haven't killed me yet for my very hot take, which I maintain because, yes, I do believe that we are missing something in Napoli's cafe culture, which is just, a place to chill, just somewhere where you can sit and chill and read and work and sleep even. And we don't have that. So, yes, I'm very much still pro Starbucks in Napoli. Give me those Starbucks. Yes.
What's Italian for sofa again? I always forget. Begins with
Divano.
Begins with D. S. Divano. Okay. Is it different in Neapolitan, the sofa?
No. No, I
Same
think
thing.
Divano is fine. Yeah. I think Divano.
I think we have a awful legacy in the United Kingdom of single issue political parties, right? Mostly to do with our relationship with the European Union, which you may or may not have heard about, that the UK is no longer part of that. I think you should be inspired by this and create your own single issue political party. Sofas for Napoli. What would you call that? Forza, no, instead of Forza Italia, Forza
Starbucks. I don't know. It's hard, it's a very controversial take. And but I think, my opinion is that if people actually look at it from an objective point of view, I think it's absolutely fine. You can take the best of both worlds and get the good coffee that we have in Napoli with the nice vibe and atmosphere that you get in the American coffee chain.
I see. The best of both worlds. You really sound like a politician now, Michele.
There you go. Vote for me.
You're ready. You're ready to set up, and I, of course, will help you. I'm happy to model reclining on a sofa with a coffee if you think that would help.
It always helps.
Yeah, indeed. So here we go. In a sec, I want to hear about number 45. But anyone listening, what we're going to be thinking about today is we're quickly going to be, for anyone listening, I like that. That was a bit pessimistic.
If there's someone listening,
if there's anyone out there,
that one guy was listening to the podcast, please.
I got a really nice message this week from a listener, and it's always good to get messages from listeners. But there is a genuine, it sounds like a humble brag, but it really is a shock that I sound like Renzi, shock, but that anyone listens to this. Anyway, so we're going to be very briefly talking about the last game. It's been covered on other podcasts, but I've got something to think about, particularly Kvaratskhelia and where he's beginning to play, and I'd like to know your opinion about what that looks like in the stadium. But most of this is going to be about Aurelio De Laurentiis's. How long was the press conference? 2 hours?
I think it was 1 hour and 56 minutes, I think.
Did you watch the whole thing?
I didn't know. So the thing is, it's even funnier because I usually watch De Laurentiis because I think it's quite interesting when he talks because he has no filter, right? He has, like, if he has a filter, is still quite light, it's not the filter that normal PR people have. So that's usually the only occasion where we learn something new because he has no filter and he's in charge of everything. So we usually, like, we speculate week in, week out, and then he comes and he just lays it all out for us. Again, you still have to filter it because it's just one side of the whole thing that he's saying. So it's De Laurentiis' version of it, but it's still very interesting. I think it's quite easy to tell if you know how to listen to it and where to look. I think it's quite easy to tell when he's, let's say, embellishing the facts and the.
So you're kind of fluent. You're fluent in De Laurentiis.
I think I am. I'm used to it. So yes, whenever De Laurentiis speaks, I pay a lot of attention. But I think this time he was speaking, and I knew he had a press conference scheduled. So I was reading he had his answers on like my Tutto Napoli app, and then after a while, like I opened 3 or 4 times, and it was like, like 10 minutes in, he says one thing, like boom, like something about Spalletti, and then, oh wow, interesting. Then I open it again after 10 minutes, still talking about whatever the stadium, whatever. And then I did this for 30, 40 minutes. And then I realized that this would be like super long. So after 40, 50 minutes, I decided to look it up and actually watch it live because it was way too interesting. And trust me, I think this is probably, I would say, top 10 historic moment in SSC Napoli De Laurentiis era, at
Okay.
least, because it was. If you haven't, even if you don't speak Italian, I recommend you watch it. It's all on YouTube on the club's channel because I don't know, man. It's like it's so interesting. It was so funny to listen to it. Like the
We'll tweet
way
that out. We'll
he
tweet that at Shadow
rambles about
Vesuvio.
stuff. It's just
Yeah. Well,
it's too much.
we're gonna go in deep on this, and don't worry, listeners. I am here to chair Michele, so this isn't going to be 73-hour podcast, which it probably could be. And we've come up with our series of hand gestures, right, Michele, that we're going to
Yes.
do. Yeah, okay. And you've even got a bit of a cold, but you've come through it to talk about it, so you're a real
Yeah,
hero.
I need to. It's important for my sanity that I do.
Great. Okay. But before we do any of that, what is number 45 in the Napoli Tombola?
Number 45 is O Vino Buono. O Vino Buono would be good wine. Il vino buono.
Excellent. And you don't drink wine?
I don't, not even the good one.
Yeah. And I do. And because it's the end of an incredibly long week, I've completely forgotten the name of my favorite wine that's on the made from the grapes on Vesuvio. Oh, what's it called? I'll look it up. Anyway, so what does that sort of mean? What's the meaning of that? Or is it just meaningless?
No, it's just, the thing is, like, you have to look at these numbers as something like the pieces of a puzzle. Like, I think one of the traditions back in the days, and there is still like somewhere in Napoli, there are some like shows about it. Like, you pick the numbers, and then, like, for example, you pick someone, it could be, I don't know, number, I don't know, 26 would be like the little Anna, so it's a child. Then you pick 45, the good wine. So you make up a story, say, little Anna was drinking some wine, and then you pick,
Okay.
I don't know, like 38, which is ammazzate, so beating. And then, yeah, because she was drinking wine, she got beat up, like they make up a story. So that's how you have to look at it. I went to a show, actually, I think 3 or 4 years ago. That was quite fun. It was the historic center of Naples, and it was I didn't know about it. Apparently, it was a tradition. It was this femminillo, which is a homosexual man, but it's like a travestite. It's a drag, like kind of like
Yeah,
a
a drag artist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
drag artist, and she was on the stage, and it was just like everyone was playing the tombola, so she was picking up the numbers, and yeah, she was making up a story as she went along. As she every once in a while she would sing and she would dance, and yeah, I was called up on the stage, and there was and we danced together in a very erotic way, I would say. That
Oh
was
my God.
interesting. Yeah, there are videos and photos which I'll never share with the word of that event, but it was quite
Release
fun.
them.
No, never,
Immediately release them.
never
Okay, I'll
happened.
mock them up. I'll draw them from my imagination. Or I'll
Yeah,
get AI.
maybe it's better if I just share them.
Exactly. I was going to say you're
Yeah,
much better off sharing them. No, we could get AI. That's what AI is there for, sort of
yeah.
creating, things that are nearly true but are actually false. Yeah, I was going to say that's such a good drama game. That's a good creative writing drama acting. I might use that in my teaching. Anyway, so before we go, what is that wine? It's like she or something. Anyway.
By the end of the episode, we'll actually
We'll know.
find
We'll
out
get
what the
there.
name is. Yes.
Because I know everyone really cares what an English guy who lives in Glasgow's favorite Neapolitan wine is. But let's talk a bit about football before we go into ADL. So we beat Verona. Don't know if you remember that.
Oh, interesting. Didn't know. Yeah,
And yet again, um, things are not going very well. Napoli choose to start playing towards Curva B and Michele Borelli. And what happens?
yeah. We won. We won. That's as easy as that. You play towards Curva B in the second half, and then you win. It's always like that. We haven't done it much this season, and to be honest, also last season we didn't do it regularly. But it's so usually that's how it works. It was a nice game. It's I mean,
Did you
just the
do much
result.
horizontal celebration
Oh
when
yeah,
that
there was also,
Kvaratskhelia
yeah.
goal went in?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, it was quite fun. It was such a one of those goals that it's when you see them live, they're completely different because you see, I don't know, it's just especially when you're in curva because they shoot towards you, so you can see the whole you know trajectory of the ball curling towards you. It's quite fun. It's amazing because you can tell in the stadium from the moment they shoot that it's gonna go in. So but you don't have the
Oh,
time you don't have the time to actually react to it before. So you realize it by the time it goes in, you're already exploding. It's always a lot of fun. I've seen a few goals like
brividi!
that live
Look,
now.
you've just
Yeah,
given
yeah.
me some brividi, mate. That
It's
sounds
it's
amazing.
great.
Imagine everyone listening. Imagine you're in the Curva, and it was pretty full, wasn't it? Actually, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
Verona. It's a pretty spicy game usually.
Curva is always yeah.
But I mean, like the stadium generally was all right, wasn't it? There was about 40,000 odd there, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, I would say, yeah, probably, yes.
Imagine, and then you see this kind of moment in slow-mo, this moment of genius from Kvaratskhelia, who I thought actually played very well for the Hog. It's good to see him actually being used in a way that's actually effective for him. And then absolute pandemonium, similar to the Salernitana game, presumably.
Yeah, very similar, yeah. Well, I think this one was probably even better because it was still a last minute goal, and it was it was just amazing to see. I love those goals. I really love them. It's great. I've seen a few of them live, and they are the kind of goals that end up becoming unforgettable, even like regardless of the game or the result. It's just one of those events that you are thankful to see live. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the whole reason why we go to the stadium, really.
And also, there's been a few people I've been chatting to who are in sort of two minds. They're like, "Oh, I might go to Naples this year, but I'm not sure because it's not a great season." And I'm like, "Go, because you don't know what's going to happen in the game itself." And Jacob was there. Hey, Jacob from Glasgow, Napoli. He was there, and I don't think he regretted going to see that game and that incredible last minute thing. So let's talk about Kvaratskhelia just for a second. Um, I thought he played brilliantly. Mazzari had some interesting things to say in the post-match conference, didn't he, about where he could play. And obviously we had Ngonge and we had Lindstrom and Kvaratskhelia as a kind of a attacking trident with who was a Raspadori ahead of them. And that was quite interesting. It sort of worked quite well. I mean, it's different when you're chasing a game, isn't it? And you did have, I think, I mean, you were in the Cordova, you could tell better than me. Cavallo seemed to be operating a bit more centrally. What what are your thoughts on that as something a bit happening again in the future or for the rest of the season? Where do you think his best place to play is, having seen him in the stadium for a couple of years now?
I think that Mazzari probably understood what the problem is with Kvaratskhelia. Then understanding the problem is one thing, and offering a solution is another, and making that solution work is a completely different story. But I've been saying it for a while that it was clear to me that, like Mazzari said, that as soon as he came here, he said that the problem with Kvaratskhelia was that, like, the clubs, that all the teams, our rivals, started to realize how much of a threat he was, and they started to put two against him, not just one. So it always happens now when Kvaratskhelia is attacking, is quite close to the box. You can tell, like, a second marker comes right away, and he, like, with two in front of him, is basically very ineffective. The problem with Kvaratskhelia is that he has one in front of him or two players in front of him. He always plays the same way, and it's very, like, he's very effective usually is quite successful at dribbling one player when it's just one.
Yeah.
But if it's two, he still tries to dribble past them, and he doesn't. Most of the time, he doesn't because it's not two times more difficult. It's way more difficult
Yeah.
dribbling two instead of dribbling one. So, um,
Or three
like
sometimes as well. Actually, there's a game where he had three on him. I can't remember which game that was. It's just,
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
yeah. So the problem is that he doesn't change the way he plays. Like he's not, we could say, mature enough to understand that. Like the thing he does when he has one player in front of him, won't work when he has two or three. Mazzari said it very well in the press conference as soon as he came. He said, they put two or three players on Kvaratskhelia and they try to kill his play like that, and it's working. But we have to realize that when they take another player and put it on Kvaratskhelia, it means that that player is not covering another part of the pitch. So there is
Exactly.
some space freeing up somewhere else, and we have to be good at exploiting this space, which is opening up because of Kvaratskhelia, no? And we haven't done
Which is
that.
the argument for playing him centrally, because actually, if you think, if you have two, three players on Kvara and he's in the middle, then those spaces are going to be a bit more apparent and
Yeah.
easier to exploit. It's interesting, isn't it, that Mazzari identified it very early, but yet we haven't really seen it deployed as a tactic. There were some nice moments when he popped up as a number nine a couple of times under Mazzarri, like mid game. I thought that was quite smart as well. Because he's not terrible in the air, actually. He's not bad at heading the ball, Kvaratskhelia. He's quite smart about what positions to get in. So what do you think about him playing in the middle? Like what was that like to see from the cover? And what do you think? Is this a sustainable thing for the rest of the season, maybe?
I don't think he's gonna consistently play in the middle. It's just that something you can do in the middle of the game. It's something you can do just to switch things up. And again, if Kvaratskhelia becomes easily readable, that's the end of him. So changing his position, it helps. I think it creates some chaos on the pitch for the defenders, for the rival, and that's a good thing. So yeah, I mean, I agree that Kvaratskhelia is tactically, I think he has to learn a lot, but he's like on a pure skill level, he's quite good, right? I mean, I don't have to like he was
Yeah,
last season's MVP, so not like
yeah.
I'm telling him now. But it's yeah, no, it's so good. So whatever you put him, he's gonna perform, but he has
But
to
it
be
will
able to
help.
do that.
I think weirdly it will help his consistency. So if there isn't so much of an idea of a fixed position that we always know he's going to be playing on the left, it will, as you say, keep the opponents on their toes. Because he's had a really interesting career at Napoli. If you think, his, beginning of last season through to February, he was, one of the most exciting players I've ever seen play in a Napoli shirt. And then he absolutely wasn't for a while, which I think was to do with the reasons that you've highlighted. And then this season has been really weird, and there's been moments when he's been fantastic, actually an improvement even on last season, but that consistency just hasn't happened. That's what I found so encouraging about the Verona game, though, is that I think he was hitting some real heights and making things happen. On connected to that, what did you make of Ngonge, our new signing? Or is it Ngonge? I don't quite know how to say
I
his
think it's
name.
Gonje. I don't know. I don't know. It was funny because when he scored, the end. I mean, at the end it wasn't even his goal, but when we scored, then Dejan Bellini made us scream his name. I think everyone said it in a different way.
Bit like Kvaratskhelia last season, but
Yeah,
we all learnt. So Cyril
yeah,
as well. I love the name Cyril. It's a great name. Very
I
sort of
agree.
Cockney name in the UK at least anyway. There is a song, a famous football chant, "Nice one, Cyril." Um, Nice one, Cyril. Nice one, son. Anyway, maybe I could start that chant in Naples when I come over this season, and everyone can laugh at me.
Yes,
Uh, but again, I think what's interesting about him is that the way that he can play, I think, in multiple positions in that attacking line, which Lindstrom apparently can do too, but we just have never really seen him play this season. Um, any thoughts on Cyril and Lindstrom a bit? Because I'd love to see those three play together and swap around and be quite fluid in that sort of attacking midfield area.
Yeah, no, me too. But for me, it's too early to tell. I don't know. I don't like. He seemed good. He seems like he can give a valuable contribution to the team, but it's too early to tell right now. So I wouldn't know. We'll see. We'll see how he. I think it's probably a good signing, but this season is a little bit cursed. So we'll
Yeah.
it's not enough to be good this season. It's I don't know. It makes very little sense. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. And one last thing about the game. What was it like seeing 4 at the back again instead of 3? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. It's hard to talk about tactics now because I don't know if that's the real problem this season, So it's I don't know. I think we found some balance with the 3-5-2 or whatever, 3-4-3, whatever we played. And it's, like the problem was that we didn't create any chances. And Mazzari wanted to fix that. So we went back to the 4-3-3. But then again, the problem, and again, I guess we're gonna talk about it later for the Rentis conference, is that I am not sure whether Mazzari is really convinced about the 4-3-3 because I am quite certain that it's De Laurentiis who asked Mazzari to play 4-3-3.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's hard. Every time they ask about it during press conferences, Mazzari always says, "No, I love 4-3-3. I know everything about last season 4-3-3." And then De Laurentiis kind of says the same things when he talks in the press conference. So it makes me think that it's something that he's kind of forced to say.
A
Mazzari.
party line. It's a bit like politics. Like when there's just been an announcement, a new policy, you'll see all the politicians go out on the news and they'll all use exactly the same phrase and exactly the same phrasing. And you know that that's been created from up above. Yes, I agree, actually. And I think also the other thing about the makeup of the squad now, sort of post 2 Mercati, is looking at that squad on paper, it's quite hard to say we should play 3 at the back or we should play 4 at the back. It's not 100% clear, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And maybe some people were saying, and I think they might be right, that perhaps we'll just play in different ways against different teams.
But then again, like I've just found the part where De Laurentiis talks about it in the press conference. He literally said, "I asked Mazzari to replicate last season's." He said, "Wait, I want to like it is. I think it's important to translate this like his phrases literally."
We'll start if you give it us in Italian to start with, and then translate it if you can. I mean, it's not 100% easy to do, but because these things do take place in Italy, listeners.
Yeah. So he said,
sometimes we forget, actually.
No, but even again, I urge you to go watch it because even the text, like the journalists that wrote it all down, they missed a lot of parts. Because sometimes it's so funny that they ask him about Spalletti and he starts answering, talking about Los Angeles. This kind of things like you cannot really replicate. So so they asked him about Garcia, whatever. He said, was talking about Garcia, and then he said, Mazzari is humble enough because he understood what he wanted. He said Mazzari has the humility to understand when I asked him to replicate Spalletti's game from last season. You could say Spalletti's, like game plan. You could say something like that. So that's something that De Laurentiis mentioned specifically. And then, if you remember, Mazzari came and they asked him, "Oh yeah, you're gonna play 3-5-2 like you usually do," and he said, "No, guys, I love the 4-3-3. I studied everything there was to study about Spalletti from last season. I want to play exactly like Spalletti played." I don't know, man. Like, sure. Like, do we believe him? Because now we know. Like, I was already sure about it, but now we know because De Laurentiis said it in the press conference that he was looking for someone who would replicate Spalletti's game plan, Spalletti's overall play.
how we
So,
ended up with girls here, and we all know that that's how it works. It's so easy to replicate these. I was thinking, like, I was born in 1983, so I was a teenager in the late 90s, early noughties, right? And back then, the fashion was to have flares, corduroy flared trousers, right? That was in. So I saw all the other cool people wearing them, and I thought, I'm going to replicate that. If I wear those trousers, everyone will come and talk to me. I'll be a very successful man with everybody. And I bought a pair of flared trousers, Michele, right? And instead of them going right the way down, they stopped at my ankles, and I looked like an absolute idiot. Okay, so that's my equivalent
yes.
of Mazzari trying to replicate Spalletti. What I should have done was be myself, wear my own stupid clothes, and then I might have made a few more friends.
There you go. That also begs the question, and that's my take on it. That's one of the questions I had after listening to De Laurentiis speaking in the press conference. My question is, maybe like, is that why so many coaches last summer said no to joining us? Maybe that's why. Because they
Yeah,
asked
imagine.
him,
Yeah,
yeah,
you're an amazing coach. You're Luis Enrique. I mean, he wants to play that way anyway. But do you want your owner to tell you how to play?
yeah. So that's one of those things where you don't really listen to what the Laurentiis says, but you try to understand what, you try to read between the lines, because they asked him about it. He said like, oh, is that, so it was, I guess we're covering the Laurentiis press conference now, because I have a lot to say, man.
Okay, so right, what we're going to do was we're going to just hold
Yes.
this now. So that was a good transition in.
Yeah.
So just to contextualize it for maybe there are some people listening that aren't as obsessive as us, that, for us, like, obviously there was a press conference a couple of days ago that ADL did, and it was unusual for a variety of reasons, right? It was unusual for its length. It was unusual for the fact that it was just him, right?
Yeah.
And there was a bit of a run up to it, so we kind of knew it was going to happen. Kelly's holding up well, can you describe what you're just holding up to me, please?
So yeah, that's a De Laurentiis figurine from San Gregorio Armeno, which is the place where they make. I didn't buy it. It's a friend of mine who knows how much I love De Laurentiis would gift
That's a
me.
great present.
Yes, a De Laurentiis figurine and I am with you, President T-shirt that I'm gonna wear. I don't know when, but I'm gonna wear it soon.
I'm disappointed you're not watching it now. So anyway, so this was called midweek, so it was Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
And also I'm actually interested for the listeners as well who might not know. So you said you went to an app, you went to Tutto Napoli.
Yes.
And so would you recommend that? I mean, obviously it's in Italian, but as a way of really staying up to date with what's going on with the club.
Yeah, it's a news aggregator website, and it's basically the first app I download every time I change my phone. It's the first app I usually open in the morning when I wake up, and probably the last one I close when I go to bed, because it's just like constant news about Napoli. It's I think you have to learn how to use it, not in a way of opening or closing or not stuff like that, but what to read and especially what to ignore, because they have a lot of stuff. Being a news aggregator, they have news from all the websites, all the newspapers, all the journalists, and a lot of them they just talk bullshit. They make up, news. So it's important. I think with time you will realize which ones are the bad sources and which one are the good sources.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so you don't take it as gospel.
I learnt a lot during one of the many Cavani sagas of sort of 3, 4, 5 years ago. Who to trust and who not to trust. That was quite helpful, actually. So anyway, I mean, a lot of things were said over the course of 2 hours. So I suppose we got to structure this. I mean, in my head, there's sort of 3 or 4 like key points that we've got to really look at. In a bit like you, Michele, I'm sort of almost less interested in what he said and more in how he said it. But then I would say that because I'm a performance lecturer. But to begin with, what would you say to summarize were the sort of key areas of discussion that happened in the press conference? And then we'll go into some more detail.
I think I want to read, because after a while it was so funny that I was live translating some of the answers he was giving, like literally live translating every word he said. to a few friends because I wanted them to understand what I was listening, and these are friends who don't speak Italian. So I want to read, if you allow me, just one short answer he gave,
Of
and
course.
then maybe the game could be. So I read this answer, and you tell me what you think the question was. Okay,
Oh, I
I think
like it.
that's a fun game to play. So
Okay.
this again, this is my live translation, word by word, from Italian to English of one of those 2 hours. It's one of these answers during the 2 hours press conference. So okay, so here it is. This is the answer. I get angry when they consider our club a stepping stone. How dare they? I leave Hollywood for Napoli and it's a stepping stone. I want to move from Rome to Napoli. I bought my son Edo a beautiful house which overlooks the Gulf. You can touch Capri even. Where do you find a place like this? A place which has the Rione Sanità with all its culture. I love Los Angeles, but Los Angeles is completely different. Los Angeles allows you to be with yourself and your spirit because there is nothing in Los Angeles, just yourself, which is fine sometimes. But here in Napoli, how can you hope to have enough time in your life to be able to experience Napoli in its entirety? You're lucky, and this is now he's speaking directly to a journalist. You're lucky with your little white fur. Aren't you feeling warm? So this is the answer, word by word, that he gave to a journal, and now you tell me what the question was.
So my first thought is that it's to do with Kim Min Jae, but then that's a bit out of date. So maybe it's to do with either Zelensky or Kvaratskelia's contract.
No. So the question was, will Mazzari remain next season too? And this was
Oh
literally
my
word by
God.
word the answer, and it was so beautiful to me how we started somewhat coherently because the answer was like, I mean, it was like managers treating us like a stepping stone because I guess he was trying to convey how he doesn't want to hire someone who's gonna leave us as soon as he becomes big.
Mm.
But I love how he just ended the answer with, "I love Napoli. What about your white fur coat? Are you feeling warm?" And there was, again, it wasn't just because the journalist said something. It was still part of his answer. And
Hilarious.
it is hard to it's hard to convey the, I don't know, the character of this man by live translating in English what he says. It's just that it's beautiful. It's just, I don't know, like, I don't know.
Well, okay, I'll do it. I'm going to summarize it because I want to come back to this because some people would say, well, why don't you like him? He's an eccentric, he's idiosyncratic. There's no other owner like him in world football. Put that thought in your head. So now, add anything I miss out here, but really this was talking about Kvaratskelia's contract extension, right? Um, it was also to do with his own responsibility for what's going on right now. So Spalletti's exit, he talked about, blames himself. He was also talking about this idea for which he said for many years, a new training center, a new stadium. There was some stuff about the European Super League, which he's been quite vocal in his support for. But again, it's ADL, so it's always a bit weird. And he also went into some detail about the firing of Rudy Garcia. They were the things that I've seen. I might have missed something out, but so why don't you see this as a straight talking, no filter, lovable eccentric who has, stabilized the club from bankruptcy and brought some of the miti of Napoli, the Vetsi and Cavani and Hamsik, and has delivered the third Scudetto. Why aren't we talking with great joy about this man, Michele?
That's such a difficult question to answer. I don't know if I can actually answer it properly.
But use this conference as a way of understanding. So what in this conference that he did helps to explain some of your feelings towards ADL?
I think it's too hard to answer to this because yes, you hear this conference, and I think it's quite easy to understand like the strengths and the weaknesses of this man in a way, not completely, but in a way. My problems with De Laurentiis are about his character, but again, it's not because I don't like him. Like honestly, like yesterday, I laughed out loud so many times. Like at one point, it was like his like the press conference officer from the club was giving, was pointing at journalists and allowing them to ask a question one at a time. And then at one point, De Laurentiis stopped him and said, and pointed toward, like he was talking to some woman, like female journalist, and he said, "No worries, I'm gonna let you talk. My press conference officer is a non-misogynist, so he won't let you, but I will." And that was honestly, it was genuinely funny.
That's a bon mot.
Yeah, so yeah, that was quite funny. But the thing is, like, so it's my problems with De Laurentiis are multifaceted, you could say. There are a lot of reasons why I don't like him. And this,
did
again,
you see any of those in this conference, Michele? What did he see in the conference?
So many, man. Like the first thing you can tell, like, okay, let me preface it by saying that the reason why his character counts, because you could even say like whatever. I mean, who cares? He's like he's not funny. He's funny. I mean, you don't have to like him. It's not like your father. That's fine. But the thing is, the reason why I think his character counts a lot is because he's the man in charge of everything. He's not a guy who's able to delegate. So everything, like every decision goes through him. Everything. So his character, so he said it explicitly even many times during this press conference that he's the guy who care. He said it in a way, he said, I care. Like I have maybe we could talk about it later because it's a very interesting question and a very interesting answer. I think it was one of the last ones, but he's always
say it now. Tell us now.
No, it's no because I want to because it was the third time they asked him this question because he evaded to answer 3 times. So this guy at the end he asked him again. But the thing is, in general, I want to say that being the guy in charge, being unable to delegate, it matters a lot what kind of character he has because he's the one who speaks to the players, to the managers, to the suppliers. So yeah, I mean, he like when
the
he
local authority for stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The mayor, everything. So if he's not a guy who's easily likable, this is gonna affect Napoli directly. When I say Napoli, I mean everything about Napoli. You know, the players, the managers, the everything about it. The reason why we have Mazzarri, and this is, I think, somewhat controversial, also because I can't really prove it 100%. But my informed opinion, my informed guess about what happened this summer is the reason why we have Mazzarri right now, which is, I mean, as to say, the reason why we had Garcia is because this guy, he is who he is. And he's not easy to deal with. There are multiple reports about him meeting with Thiago Motta and Thiago Motta at the end just saying, yeah, whatever. I mean, just rejecting us. And I mean, this guy decided to stay in Bologna, not in Real Madrid, instead of coming to us. And De Laurentiis touched on it a little bit, and he said, "Oh yeah, well, there's nothing." I mean, he didn't say no to Napoli because of me or because of something I said. He said no because he's already thinking about big European teams that he wants to join. Now, this is one of those things that I believe has to be filtered because De Laurentiis will never say, "Oh yeah, Thiago Motta didn't join us because he didn't like me." He will never say that, right?
Yeah.
So,
I screwed up that conversation. Yeah, exactly. That's a really interesting point. I think it's such a good point to say that actually, if there is no infrastructure in a club, the character of the owner is so important because that's to do with contract negotiations, transfer negotiations, hiring and firing.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's
Remember
where it
that
actually matters.
This is the guy who said last summer when Spalletti left, he said, this team can be managed by anyone. Yep. That's what he said. So this is the guy. This is De Laurentiis,
yep.
and
we're living those consequences.
Exactly, 100%. This attitude affects everything.
And
everything.
there was an example actually from the press conference, I think that I want to talk about now, which is when he's talking about the firing of Rudy Garcia. He said that, before the match, he was going to get rid of him, but Rudy Garcia was like, no, I'm going to turn it around. And then at half time, he goes down and talks to him and tells him to F off, basically.
Exactly.
And at the end, he fired him. And I thought, okay, fair enough, whatever. And superficially, there might be people going, yeah, great. We were playing badly and he's decided to not take no crap from nobody. But then you look at it calmly and objectively. We're a club that's really struggling to find a manager to commit or a coach to commit to the long-term vision of it, which he's kind of admitted in this press conference. So why would you then say that publicly? What kind of a manager wants to work for someone that's coming in at half time? If I was directing a play and the artistic director came up to me at the interval and started telling me things I wanted to change about it, I'd tell him to fuck off.
Yes.
Or her, and I would not want to work in that theatre again. It's my show. I've directed it. And, we can talk about it afterwards or whatever, but don't walk up to me halfway through and tell me what's wrong with it.
Exactly. I agree. And these are the things that
extraordinary,
he's
really.
telling us. These are the things that he's telling us. Imagine how many things he didn't say.
Yeah,
Again,
it's true.
this is my point. This is my overall point. You have to be able to deduce, extrapolate from his words. And so he's saying probably 1% of everything that's happening in the team, in the club, everything that has happened over the years. You can pick some of the things that are actually very clear and explicit. And I think you can deduce and you can assume what's going on behind the scenes. For example, this is one of my personal battles, which I'll keep fighting until I die. So the Sarri battle, because a lot of people said, Sarri wanted to leave, he betrayed us, fuck Sarri. Now, this, do you remember what happened after we lost against Real Madrid?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this a few times,
right?
And yeah,
Yes.
he basically took a dump on the team at the wrong moment.
Yeah, publicly on national television. He went after we lost against Real Madrid, a team which would go on and win, I don't know how many Champions Leagues in a row, like
3.
four of the next 5, 4 in 5 years after that. And we lost 3-1, so not like 10-1. We lost 3-1 against Real Madrid. He went after that. He went to national television and he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, "I'm ashamed of this performance. There's only one guy who played well. I think it was Diawara. I think he mentioned I'm not satisfied with this performance." He was very angry. He was complaining in national television, like very vehemently. You can only imagine what happened in the dressing room after that game. You can only imagine what happened in the coming weeks after that game. And then Sarri leaves and you blame Sarri. That's my point. It's like you have to we cannot judge just by what we see, because what we see is not enough. And we are lucky in a way because this doesn't really have a filter. He doesn't speak he speaks too often to the press, but it's not like he speaks every week. So we don't know everything, but we know a few things. We know the way he perceives himself. We know the way he handles the team. We know how the team is structured, and we know, for example, like you pointed out, we know that he's not shy of, he's not afraid of going into the dressing room at halftime and voicing his concerns, his dissatisfaction directly with the manager. Again, not at the end of the game, which is still unacceptable in the dressing room, but it's the end of the game. No, at halftime. I don't care if it's Garcia, if we're losing against him. I don't care. At halftime, this guy goes from the VIP tribune to the dressing room, and he says he tells Garcia how to play. He literally said, "When he listened to me, we won." And then he stopped listening and he said, "Let me do what I want to do." And then I told him, do you want to get sacked? And then I sacked him. This is at halftime. So this is a guy who thinks he knows how to
Manage a football club,
Ex,
basically.
ex,
Be
no,
a
no,
coach.
exactly. Manage the football club, but on the sporting side of things.
Yeah.
And that's like you think that's healthy? And this is only one thing that we know because he mentioned it in the press conference. Imagine how many times he did this in the past few years. Imagine. So now I'm the first one to blame Spalletti, for example, for leaving. But for the way he left, especially. But do you think it's easy to work with a president like this? I mean, there
No.
must be a reason why they all leave after 2 or 3 years.
And also maybe a reason why we don't have a training ground in the stadium. So it's interesting if you think there are kind of three key points of this press conference: Kvaratskhelia contract, these new estates developments, training center, stadium, or whatever, and the sort of ongoing manager thing, right? So think of the key players in those three issues, right? Kvaratskelia's agent and Kvaratskhelia himself. The mayor, the local authority, investors who might want to give us some money to make this happen for the training center and stadium sponsors and those sorts of things, and then a future coach. And the eccentricities and the unprofessionalism and the chaos that came out of ADL's mouth that you've summarized brilliantly with that thing about I'd like your fur coat. None of the key players in those three key things will want to sit down with ADL or be looking forward to it in a way, off the back of that. And it's interesting that some of the positive reaction to the press conference was like, great, ADL's taking responsibility for it. And it's like, well, I don't care. Like, what's important is that you behave in a way that people want to work with you. And what I'm finding increasingly problematic with his behavior is, I think, because he won the Scudetto, that it's sort of galvanized him to be even more eccentric, which is going to push people away. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in agreement with this.
No, one of the things that you have to realize, and like if people don't understand, what's going on or why, there is so much, I wouldn't say hatred because hate is a big word, but you have to realize that basically everyone who works with De Laurentiis, everyone who has a business relationship with De Laurentiis hates him. Again, hate is a big word, but in the context of a business venture, let's say, they would rather work with someone else. I know this because of some rumors I've heard, but it's public knowledge. Like just today there was a Napoli counselor who kind of answered to some of the points the Laurentiis raised about the stadium, because one of the things he mentioned about the stadium is he said, I give the mayor 120 days to give me the stadium, otherwise I'll go somewhere else. Like, who do you think you are? Like the king of Naples? Like you give an ultimatum to the mayor? What the fuck? It's unbelievable.
And the mayor's not going to back down. I mean, obviously the mayor's not going to.
No, the problem is that this is the issue. The mayor, like people, like, and this is my issue, I guess, with a lot of pro De Laurentiis people. They don't really know what they're talking about most of the time, because especially when we talk about the stadium, and I'm obsessed about the stadium because it's one of my dreams for many, many years has been now to have a new stadium. So every time,
well, we got loads of listener responses about it, so we're going to do a whole episode on the stadium at some point soon.
But just to cover what they said about the stadium, like the thing is, a lot of people say, I still read it now every day. They said, if only the city would let De Laurentiis buy the stadium. Man, it's not that simple. That's not the problem. The thing is, De Laurentiis keeps rambling aimlessly, randomly about the stadium because he knows what the problems are. And the problem is not the city not wanting to give the stadium. Like, it's so funny to me because De Laurentiis speaks and rambles, and then the answer from the mayor is always the same because the situation is always the same. He says, De Laurentiis says, give me the stadium. I will do this. I will build the best stadium in the whole world. If only they give it to me. They are incompetent. If they don't give me the stadium, they will make the people hate them. And the mayor always replies the same thing. I'm more than happy to give him the stadium. I'm required by law to have a natural project in my hand from the guy, from the club, from the company which wants to get the stadium. If I don't have this project in my hand, I am not legally allowed to give the stadium. In other words, you are not allowed to gift the stadium to a company, because the stadium is a public property, and it would be extremely wrong from a legal point of view to just give it away based on what?
Yeah.
Based on a promise. So I go to the mayor, Michele Borelli. I said, "Oh, you know what? No worries about it. I'll find some money. I'll build the best stadium ever. Give me the stadium." And they
But
said,
yeah,
"Oh yeah, sure, I trust you."
what kind of a precedent would that set? It's so
Exactly.
open to corruption.
No, but it's literally illegal. So the only way they can do it is they have to have a proper investment plan. And this has been going on even with the last mayor. The last mayor was the same. He needs to have a proper project in his hand. They can evaluate the project, and based on the project, if it's deemed worthy, then they can build the stadium. The only project, the Rentis gave only one project many years ago, and the project was for a 20 million renovation of the stadium. 20 million doesn't even cover the toilets to renovate the stadium. They spent, I think, 25 or 30 millions in 2018, and the stadium, you can tell it's basically the same. Yeah, they changed some seats, and they changed they changed the running track and stuff like that.
Blue.
But yeah, it's blue. Yes, exactly. But it was very expensive, and it was 30 millions. So with the Laurentiis project was 20 millions. The last mayor said no to it because it wasn't enough, and that's it. That's solely. So now the problem is the Laurentiis says, I just give me the stadium, and the mayor still says, give me a project. If you give me a project, if you give me an investment plan for it, I'm more than happy to give it to you. But I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
That's it. So that's yeah.
I vote for Bagnoli. That's where I want the stadium.
Yeah, that's
by the sea with a beach.
Yeah, that's complicated.
But that's never going to happen. Okay, I think that was good. I think we covered quite a lot of things. I think people have different takes on ADL, and it's always going to be a bit of a divisive. It is so interesting though that some people absolutely love this guy, some people absolutely hate this guy. I can't think of another owner that splits fan base opinion in quite the same way. Just briefly,
can I read you another question and another answer that I this game?
Yes. Oh yeah, I like this game. Yes, I like it. I like it.
Now I'll read you the question and then the immediate answer he gave after the question was asked. The question was, what about the new training center and the new stadium? Paraphrasing, but this was the question about the and the immediate answer, literally translated, is, you see, since COVID, I haven't been able to go to Los Angeles as much as I want to, and I miss it a lot. That's how we started an answer about the new stadium and the new, literally. And then, I mean, he still rambled about, the US. I think the idea was to mention this because he said, now that he doesn't go to Los Angeles anymore, he has to focus on Italian TV series. I don't know why he mentioned that. I don't even remember that anymore. But yeah, it's just, that's so. Again, I strongly recommend to watch the full press conference because it's just by the body language you can understand. And one of the things I think that was very important is that I mentioned it before, but he got asked a question 3 times by 3 different journalists. And the funny part is that this question was asked by at least 2 or 3 of these 3 journalists are journalists that he specifically mentioned as journalists that he likes and that he esteems. So the question is, paraphrasing, but the question was, don't you think that the problem with the club, current and overall, is that you have a very bad temper and bad character and bad attitude? This is, again, paraphrasing, but this is literally the question he got asked. And he evaded the answer. Again, now you know the way he answered this question. Like, you asked him this, and then he starts talking about, like, Angelina Jolie, for example. So he evades these questions. And at the end, it was quite funny because the 3rd time he got asked this question, the journalist specifically said, 2 of my colleagues asked you this question twice and you still didn't answer. I want to ask you again. Don't you think that the problem is that you have a very bad temper? Again, a press conference with De Laurentiis and 3 journalists tell him that he's basically unlikable, right? Yeah. Like, it was, I think this guy, the last journalist who asked this question is a 19 years old, like, journalistic legend. I don't know the name, but while he was asking the question, De Laurentiis stopped him and said, I love you, I read you every day. I really like you a lot.
How old? 19 or 90?
90.
Oh, so he's like an old fella, right? Okay.
Yeah. But the 90s even said, when it's your birthday, I want you to celebrate. I'm gonna throw you a party. Like he really likes this guy, and I kind of felt for De Laurentiis because he said that, and after he said, "Oh, I'm gonna celebrate your birthday with you. I love you. I read you every day." The question was, "Why are you so unlikable?" And I kind of felt for him. I wasn't able to watch De Laurentiis, like his facial expression while he was asking them, because it was quite, like, the way he asked the question was quite harsh. But I think it says a lot, no? Because again, they like each other, they're friends, but still the question was, it was quite long. The question, he even touched about the fact that, oh, you come here to a press conference and he talked to us journalists like in a way that is not appropriate. You come here and I think you should give us some distance, because you're telling us that we are incompetent and arrogant and useless and stuff like that. Like, it was a very complicated, I think, to the point question, quite brave, if I could say. But again, I think it's not a coincidence it was asked by a 90 years old guy. The guy doesn't care anymore. And yeah, again, I listened very carefully to the answer after he was asked this question, and I mean, the answer was all over the place. It was just talking about everything. I think the most relevant part of this answer was when he talked about the fact that basically what I told you before, that he's incapable of delegating. The funny part is that he mentioned this like it's a good thing. So the question, part of the okay, let's say the part of the answer that made sense was about I can read it to you a little bit.
Yeah, go on.
It was, I said it before. I said that I am an entrepreneur and I participate as in all my companies, from the ice cream business. Okay, no, well, no, I cannot read it literally. This is too much. This is too much, because maybe people don't know, but he has an ice cream business. So here he basically said, I have an ice cream business and I deal with it every day. I have a car rental business and I deal with it every day. I have a real estate business and I deal with it every day. And so I have a club and I deal with it every day. So the way he was saying this was as a, I think you could interpret this as probably like the good things and the bad things about De Laurentiis are all in this answer, because he doesn't delegate, which is very bad, because everything goes through him and you cannot know everything there is to know about how to manage a football club. Even when he touched about the t-shirts and how we have a new sponsor and stuff, his answer was, oh yeah, I told my daughter, who just graduated in psychology, come here, come to your father, come to my club, and you are in charge of the merchandise now. Like, literally said, this my daughter graduated in psychology, so yeah, I put her in charge of the merchandising department.
That's what they teach in psychology these days. How to sell t-shirts.
Apparently, and to be honest, to her credit, the t-shirts are pretty good. They are good actually. So what? So whatever. But I think you can understand a lot about De Laurentiis by this answer, because he takes pride in the fact that he is personally involved in all the decisions. But that's a good thing in some ways, because, for example, when he has to choose, like a sporting director, when he has to choose a manager, he's the one in charge of it. So he's the one who speaks to these people. And, he speaks to them for quite a long time. So, I mean, if you trust De Laurentiis about his, judgment of character, then maybe you're gonna also trust his decision when it comes to appointing new executives, directors, and managers. And to be honest, over the years, he's had quite a few, some good intuitions when it comes to managers, right? Spalletti, Sarri, Mazzarri, even the first time. So it's a good thing that he's involved. This is the good aspect about being involved personally. The bad aspect is that, again, everything goes through him. And at one point during the press conference, it was even, he was asked like, oh yeah, what about the stadium? It was something about the stadium. I don't remember, something like that. And his answer, again, paraphrasing, but a part of his answer was, I have to do this, I have to do that, I was in Los Angeles, I was here, I don't have time for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean that's revealing, isn't it? And
Again,
that's why these things never happen. And anybody listening who's got a job who feels a bit overworked, one of the big challenges, isn't it, is prioritizing your tasks. And then there's always those two things that you needed to do. Like today's the only day this week that I haven't been teaching, and it's just been clearing my inbox and just going, but there's still stuff that I need to do. I haven't got to the end of the day because I haven't got enough time to do it, And it's the same. If you do everything yourself, and actually you've got to get other people to help you out. Right. We're gonna have to stop talking about ADL's press conference, Michele. I'm sorry.
oh,
We've reached the end of our time for this.
I think we
Oh,
covered about 10% of the press conference.
that's
There's
fine.
so much to say.
These issues won't go away, so there'll be plenty of time to talk about them again. Briefly want to just touch upon we're playing Milan Sunday night away.
Yeah.
Have they done that thing again where they're not letting people from Campania into the stadium?
Oh no, this time was even funnier. Oh, this time was amazing. So this time they started the ticket sales, and they said these tickets, so the away section tickets, are only for Campania residents. So if you are a Napoli fan from Milan, for example, from Rome or from Florence, whatever, you were not allowed. Glasgow, yes. You were not allowed to get a ticket to the away section, but you were allowed to get a ticket to the home sections.
That's so weird. Why? I don't understand.
Because they're idiots. You want to know my theory? My theory is that they read the directives that came from the Ministry of the Interior. They misinterpreted what they wrote, and they said, and they just put the sale for the Campania residents. I think that's my theory, because I read some of those statements or whatever, like the official directives from the ministry, and sometimes it's hard to understand them. That's true, but the things that they're always the same. So even though they're hard to understand, now you know what to
I love
expect.
it. They just got mixed up and they did the opposite of what they were supposed to do, because the
Exactly.
idea is in that sort of awful way, they're just trying to keep people away. I don't know how they can get past the UN Convention of Human Rights on this.
I have no idea. Because
it is in direct contradiction of that stuff to say
I agree.
you cannot be in a place because of where you're from.
I agree.
I think
I've been saying it for years. I don't know how it's illegal. I don't know how
somebody needs to write a dissertation about it. We need like a law student to actually a human rights law student to look into this.
I agree. The funny thing is that after like some Napoli clubs from around Italy complained about it, and on a Sunday they said, "Oh yeah, sure. I mean, whatever. Yeah, let's open the sale for everyone." So they fixed the mistake on a Sunday because they realized that it was a mistake. But still, they sold tickets only to Campania residents for 4 or 5 days because of a mistake, because I didn't read it well. What a joke of a country. I don't know how else to say it.
So what's the state of play now? So if I was wanting to go to that game, it was a bit late now. No one's going to listen to this.
I think now it's sold out. But yeah, I think for the first 3, 4, 5 days, yeah, a lot of people. I know for a fact that some Napoli fans from Milan bought tickets to the Milan section, not any section, the Curva section. So where the Milan Ultras are.
Oh my God.
Again, because they were forced to.
Let's hope there isn't any trouble. I've got a bad feeling about this game in terms of entertainment value. So we got Pioli, who people are saying ADL quite fancies to take over next season.
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I admire him. I'm talking about people's character. I admire his character hugely after the Davide story stuff, and also just the way that he conducts himself. I'm a big fan of. Less of a fan about his football, particularly at the moment. And I fear that Mazzarri's going to go through at the back, and it's going to be worse than Lazio. It's going to be worse than that game. That's my fear, but I hope I'm wrong.
Could be. The only thing, the difference that Milan is much better than Lazio, so
it's true. And actually, they have picked up a bit. God, we talked about football way too much this episode. Do you have a Neapolitan expression of the week?
Yes, I do.
And is it by ADL? Is it a quote from his press conference?
It refers, well, I mean, it could have been, I guess, but yeah, it refers to one of the things he said during the press conference that I found funny. It was about Zielinski. I think it was probably one of the most interesting parts about the press conference when they asked him about Zielinski and they asked him why is he not playing, and he was quite honest about it. He said, "Look, I bought some players, very expensive players, with a loan with an option to buy, and the loan only lasts 6 months. So I have 6 months to decide whether to spend a lot of money to activate the option to buy or not. So I need them to play, and since the Liskin is leaving in 6 months, then it's only natural that I make the players that I have to evaluate play and not Zielinski." It was even I quite like.
I
This was
hate this, by the way. I absolutely hate this because I think
well.
it puts so much pressure on those lone players.
I
I think
agree.
it gives the opposition team weeks to plan about how to play against them anyway. But you
Yes.
know,
I mean,
there's
well,
pros and cons.
this was the non-toxic part of the answer because he also blamed Zielinski a little bit and
Yeah.
especially blamed um his agent. It's just he always talks about that. He always talks about money, but when it's money that he has to spend, people are yeah, he complains about it. When it's money that he has to get, then yeah, I mean it's again, it's one of those things that you have to pay a lot of attention to. The way he speaks about money. It's quite funny and it's pretty untranslatable because he uses a lot of fancy words and phrases when he talks about money. It's quite funny. But yeah, so I found it interesting how he basically broke up in a way with Zielinski
Oh
over
God.
money or in general. So
Yeah.
uh, my phrase of the week is this. È morta creatura, non si più compara. È morta creatura, non si più compara. So, literally translated as the the child is dead. We are not relatives anymore.
Oh
But
God.
yeah, well, it's a it's a way to say basically once an interest ends, the mutual need ends too, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. So
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
nothing else that links us. There is nothing we have in common anymore. There's nothing that our mutual interests don't collide anymore. So let's each go our separate ways. I found that part of the press conference quite funny, and I think this Napolitan phrase of the week that seems a little bit dark, but it's really not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's saying that
encapsulate that quite
you're not
well.
part, and it sums up exactly what you're saying, that you're either in a De Laurentiis's world or you're not. And
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that's interesting. Yes.
is that a working environment you want to be in? It's kind of someone used this phrase the other day. We were bitching about a professor that works somewhere else, and somebody I know said that this person tends to laser beam. So if you're in this person's laser beam, it feels great. You're in, and if you're not, you're nothing, you know. And that's not a sort of world that I think is a good world to live in personally. Um, Excellent. Uh, so before we go, I just want to give a shout out to some of our network colleagues. Our dear Raffa Rispo. Ciao, Raffa. Uh, there's a new podcast. We're no longer the Lone Rangers, Michele.
Too bad. Well, I mean, I'm happy that Rafa is having a podcast, but yes, too bad. It was fun. It was fun to be the only ones.
That was a reference to a very underrated 90s movie called Airheads, starring Brendan Fraser. And he's in a band that are called the Lone Rangers. It's quite funny. And they're like, but that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so please do everybody check out Noi Tifiamo Napoli podcast. And Rafa's got a new co-host, Daniel Russo. And if you haven't listened to the kind of first episode, I actually found it quite moving, Michele, because I thought you got Rafa, who's the same age as me. He's going to be 41 in March. whose family kind of come from the Bronx via Naples, and you've got Daniel, who I think is in his mid-20s, and his family come from Naples via the Bronx. So they were trying to work out if their families actually know each other. And they've been brought together without sort of that connection. The connection is the club. And it's really beautiful, actually. And if you think, you're in Naples, I'm here, there is something for all of our things that we don't like about this club and what we get frustrated with. But there is something quite cool about how there is this point in common that does spread around the globe and also generations as well. And I thought that was quite cool. So anyway, give it a listen, everybody. I'm really pleased that Daniel's part of the family now. Anyway, so any last thoughts for our listeners before we run away?
Oh man, I wish we could talk about this press conference for another 5 hours because there are so many interesting things. You mentioned how he sacked Garcia. He mentioned how he appointed Mazzarri. Very interesting words about that part too. A lot of stuff about the stadium and a lot of stuff about the new training center, which is quite interesting. I think.
Do you think it's going to happen?
It has to happen. He's forced to. He has no choice. He's gonna be kicked out of Castel Volturno in 2025. So he has no choice but to build a new training center. And it's, again, it's probably the things that people overlook that I'm most interested in. Like the fact that he praises Empoli. Like at one point, he was talking about Empoli and he praised Empoli for having such a strong youth system. He said, no, that's a very serious, admirable youth system. They actually put real money in it. And, when he says that, I mean, it begs the question, so why don't you? My idea was that he didn't care about the youth system at all. And now here he is praising a team that actually does. And
well, it's a bit like him saying, why doesn't living in Naples is great?
Yeah, and
why don't you live in Naples? Then?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
so what I'm going to say is, because we're now nearly like an hour and 15 minutes. Listeners, if you want us to talk about something specifically from this press conference or anything ADL related, let us know, and we'll pick these things back up again. You can do that by finding us on Twitter at Shadow of Vesuvio. You can find me at Henry Calcio, Michele at Napoli Tickets or at Michele GNT.
Yes, and if you want us to record a 5 hours episode about this press conference, do say it too, and we'll do it. We'll do it because we have
My
to.
world record with Raffa when we did those episodes about Maradona, we did 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that's.
I loved every second of talking about, because we went game by game about all of Maradona's seasons in Naples. Did it during lockdown. We have to finish it. We will finish it. So yeah, do let us know. Yeah, and we're part of the Far From Vesuvius network, which, now has 2 shows, might even have some more in the future. Watch this space. Great. Well, in the meantime, everybody, take care and Forza Napoli.
Sempre.